This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. Bruchim Abam. So this is the last year before Purim. Haba Aleinu L'Tova. And we want to speak about a subject that we began speaking about last year on Purim. And hopefully, B'siyata D'Shmaya, Yibam Shem will give us added insight and added understanding. So the Gemara Megillah on Daf Hey, Amud Aleph, going on to Amud Beis, discusses a very unusual practice of Rebbi Yehuda HaNasi. He had three unusual practices. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rebbi, the great Rabbi Judah the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the redactor of the Mishnah. Nota Netiya B'Purim. He planted a tree on Purim, which B'chlal is hafla v'fela. He has nothing better to do than plant a tree. We all know that there's a mitzvah of Mikra Megillah, Mishlach Manas, Matan Savyoinim, Suda. Maybe you want to add a minhag, you shake a grager. You want to add other minhagim, you go collecting for random tzedakahs. Somebody wants to knock on the door, he's collecting for a moisad, which moisad? MRF. Later it was determined MRF was my retirement fund. But, everybody has different minhagim of what to collect for. But this is a new one. Planting a tree on Purim. Like Rabbi Yehuda had nothing better to do than to plant a tree on Purim. V'rachatz b'kroina shel tzipori b'shivas b'tammuz. Not only that, he bathed in the wagon of tzipori on the 17th day of Tammuz, which is also highly unusual. 17th day of Tammuz is a day of mourning. Why was Rebbe bathing on the 17th day of Tammuz? Is one allowed to take a bath on the Dalat Tanesim? It's a questionable practice. And third of all, the Gemara says, Bikesh Lakar Tisha B'Av. He wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av. I'm sure almost everyone here is in favor of that as well. But Rebbe wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. So what's that all about? And the Gemara says, well, he didn't want to be Oiker Tisha B'Av straight up. It's a scenario where Tisha B'Av came out on Shabbos and it was being pushed off to Sunday. So Rebbe said, once I'm pushing it off, let's get rid of it completely. These are the three unusual practices of Rebbe. He planted a tree on Purim, he bathed on Shavas B'Tammuz, and he wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. So the Gemara asks, how could Rebbe plant a tree on Purim? But Rav Yosef taught, it says, Simcha, Mishta, and Yom Tov. From there we learn out that you're now to do malacha on Purim. It's interesting halacha. You're now to work on Purim. So how could Rebbe plant a tree? So the Gemara says, no, it's not a problem. Rebbe was a 14th guy. And he planted a tree on the 15th. So he didn't actually do malacha on Purim. Rebbe lived in a place where Purim is observed on the 14th. And Rebbe planted the tree on the 15th. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Rebbe lived in Tiberia, and Tiberia has a wall in it since the time of Yeshua ben Nun. So in fact in Tiberia they celebrate Purim on the 15th. So Gemara says, fine. So Rebbe planted it on the 14th. So Gemara says, it's still not good. Why? Because it's not pashut that Tiberia has a wall around it from the time of Yeshua ben Nun. Because there was a Tana by the name of Chizkiah. He laned the Megillah on Tiberia 2 days, the 14th and the 15th. So how could Rebbe plant on the 14th? But we know that Tiberia is a Sveika, and you're not allowed to do Malach on either, and you have to lay the Megillah on both. So Gemara says, fine. Chizkiah didn't know. Rebbe knew. Rebbe knew Tiberia was a 15th city, and he planted on the 14th. So now we have new information. Not only did Rebbe plant a tree on Purim, but he planted it in Tiberia, our favorite city. So first of all, what's Rebbe doing planting trees on Purim? What is it, Arbor Day? It's somebody told me that they daven in a shul, and this shul collects for tree planting in Eretz Yisrael, and they collect the money on Purim. So they said, he thinks it's based on this Gemara. I doubt it has anything to do with this Gemara. That's just the day that they collect the money. But what in the world is Rebbe doing, planting trees on Purim? And where we're up to in the Gemara, you can't do malacha on either day. No, the Gemara says, Rebbe knew that Tiberia was a 15th, and he planted on the 14th. But the Gemara says, he can't do malacha on either. Says the Gemara, no. Really, you're not to eulogize on either. You're not to fast on either. But malacha, it's only asr for 1 day. And then the Gemara concludes as follows. V'yibayisema, 4 lines from the end. La'olam nahag. Really, The location of Rebbi was in a place where the minhag was not to do malacha on either day. And you know what kind of tree Rebbi planted? It wasn't an oak tree, it wasn't a maple, it wasn't an apple tree, it wasn't an orange tree, it wasn't an evergreen tree. Thank you. What did he do? It was binyan shel simcha, it was natir shel simcha, a planting of joy. Kedetnan, when certain days pass and the rain hasn't fallen, so then you have to diminish building and planting. What kind of planting? Planting of simcha. So now, not only did Rebbi plant a tree, he planted a simcha tree. What in the world a simcha tree is, and why Rebbi planted it on Purim, is rather strange, rather odd. But that's what we would like to investigate tonight. Why was Rebbi planting a tree on Purim, and why did he need to plant a simcha tree? Okay. Okay, we were going to discuss that as well. He wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av, and he wanted to bathe on the 17th day of Tammuz. We'll discuss that as well. We come to a very interesting phenomenon. We know that on Purim, even though in the shuls probably we're familiar with, they don't say something called kroivitz. However, in the old minhag was we would make an insert into the chazor sashatz of Purim. Probably some shuls they still do that, right? In the old time places they still say something called kroivitz. So by the way, I once asked a group of people, does anybody know what in the world does the word kroivitz mean? And nobody knew, except for one old yid said right off the bat, what do you mean? Kroivitz is? Kaorina v'Yeshua v'Ahale tzadikim. That's what kroivitz stands for. Kaorina v'Yeshua v'Ahale tzadikim. So it's a special nigun, it's a special song that's added to the Shemana Esrei. And if you look at the kroivitz for Purim, we see something, hafla v'fela. All 18 brachas of Shemana Esrei have a kroivitz. That is all 18 except for one. Which bracha doesn't have a kroivitz? Es tzemach David avdecha meheras hatzmiach. There's no kroivitz on that bracha. We go from Bnei Yerushalayim to Shoymei Atfila. Haloi davarhu. Why is there no kroivitz for Es tzemach David? So what Reb Sender wants to suggest a chiddush that they forgot to write it. Maybe, but we're going to see if we could do a little better than that. Why is there no kroivitz for Es tzemach David? Okay, so Rav Hershel Schachter, in his sefer called B'ikvei Hatzoin, quotes a Tosfos Rid in Masechta Tainis. The Tosfos Rid is discussing something very interesting. Throughout Shas, Shemona Esrei is called Shemona Esrei, 18 blessings. What are you talking about, 18 blessings? It's 19 brachas. So, that came later. So change the name, Change the name. When you upgrade, you change the name. Let's say you used to drive an Oldsmobile, and now you drive a better car. You don't say you drive an Oldsmobile. I don't think most people say the name of something that they used to do. So what in the world happened to this tefillah that we call it Shemona Esrei? Shemona Esrei is a dinosaur. We don't daven Shemona Esrei. We daven Tisha Esrei. This is the kasha of the Tosfos Rid. And the Tosfos Rid basically answers that in fact we do daven Shemona Esrei. Because Yerushalayim Ercha and Es tzemach David is one bracha. In fact, in Eretz Yisrael, they would only say one bracha. They would combine Yerushalayim and Es tzemach David as one bracha. And therefore, even after the takana of Shmuel HaKatan, who was Masakein, V'lam Oshinim, we still daven Shemona Esrei. In fact, Rav Hershel Schachter points out that even we who after the Chachmei HaTalmud, who enacted V'lam Oshinim, so we have 19 brachas, and we say V'Yerushalayim and Es tzemach as two separate brachas, but we still put in V'Yerushalayim Ercha, we put in the words about Malchus Beis David. Think about what we say in V'Yerushalayim Ercha. Shalayim Ercha Brach Mem Tashav. V'chisei David Avdecha Mehira L'Seicha Tachin. So we talk about Malchus Beis David in Yerushalayim. So that shows that really, in essence, it's all one bracha. Malchus Beis David is the hashlama of Binyan Yerushalayim. In fact, the Tosfos Rid says that's why there's no kroivitz and Purim for a Tzemach David, because in essence it's not a separate bracha. So we make it a separate bracha. Very nice. That's great. You want to say a separate bracha? You're allowed to. But inherently, it's one long bracha, and therefore it does not deserve its own kroivitz. So that would be the simple answer to the question, why there's no kroivitz for Purim on Es Semach David. The only thing is, the Tosfos Rid does say that our Shas seems to indicate that Es Semach David Avdecha is in fact a separate bracha. And if it is a separate bracha, then why is there no kroivitz for Purim on Es Semach David? Okay, so that's question number 2. Why did Rebbe plant a tree on Purim? Question number 2 is, why is there no kroivitz for Es Semach David? Question number 3. Why is there no halal on Purim? Say, come on, Rabbi, this is not your car. The Gemara Megillah has a whole sugya on this. Why there's no halal on Purim? The Gemara gives various reasons. Kriyas HaMegillah, right? Rav Nachman says, Kriyas Zuhi Halela. Reading the Megillah is halal. Okay, very nice, but say halal anyway. So what if reading the Megillah is halal? You don't say Hashem's name in the Megillah, so wouldn't it be better to read the Megillah and say halal? Why don't we say halal on Purim? So the Gemara gives various reasons. But at the end of the day, the Sefer Aryeh Shag asks, we know there are two, and this is, I'm adding to it, we all know in halacha there are 2 reasons to say halal. One is for a miracle, and one is for Yom Tif. And if you want to say that outs the miracle, Kriyas HaMegillah is a halal, fine. But besides Purim is celebrating a Yom Tif, Purim is also a moyed. The Zohar says that Purim is a moyed. In fact, Tikkunei Zohar writes that when Noach took the animals 2 by 2, 7 by 7 to protect to perpetuate the world, the 2 by 2 and the 7 by 7 represents the Yom Tovim. The 2 by 2 are the 2 Yom Tovim, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, 2 days of Shavuos. The 7 by 7, the Zohar says, are Pesach and Sukkot. Ask the Zohar, how could you count Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos 2 and 2, but the second day is questionable, it's fake of the Yoma. Says the Zohar, Purim is mashlim, the second day of Rosh Hashanah and the second day of Shavuos. So Purim is a moyed. Why don't you say a full halal like every other moyed? Kriyas HaMegillah is Yotzei the halal? Another interesting question. The whole Megillah is based on the following 2 words, which are very mysterious. Listen carefully. Esther Hamalka v'sinasein lach u'mabakashasech ad chatzi hamalchus v'seyas. The king tells Esther on the second day, what is your shaila? Your shaila, I'll give it to you. What's your bakasha? Your bakasha? Nah, I'm not going to give you up to half of the kingdom if it's a bakasha. So the king is differentiating between a shaila and a bakasha. A shaila, it's yours. A bakasha, not really. And then Esther says, Tinosen li nafshi b'sheilasi. My shaila is me. My bakasha is my people. What are these 2 things? What was the shaila? What was the bakasha? Why would Achashverosh give in on the shaila? Why would Achashverosh not give in on the bakasha? Why is Esther saying, my soul is my shaila? And why is Esther saying, my people is my bakasha? Okay, Marv Rabbi Sai, fasten your seatbelts. There are many different types of shiurim on Purim. This is getting into a real hardcore politics of Purim. This is all about the politics of Purim. The Gemara in Shabbos says like this. There's a man by the name of Rebbi. And Rebbi throughout Shas, whenever he has the opportunity to defend his ancestor, he does so. And who's the ancestor of Rebbi? David. Rebbi was a scion of the Davidic dynasty. And therefore, whenever Rebbi had the opportunity to defend King David, he did. And the Gemara in Shabbos says on Daf Nun Vav, that on the Pasuk, that Madua Bazis es Devar Hashem Lasoy Sarah, that Rav said, Rebbi, who came from Mishpachas David, goes and jumps through hoops, Mahapech V'darish B'schusei de David. That says Rebbi, David didn't do anything bad, it's Lasoy Sarah, he wanted to, but he didn't. So that's the Yesod in the Torah. Rebbi will do whatever he can to uphold the honor of Malchus Beis David. And Umatu B'mei Midrasha, it's well known, and we've said this over a number of times, that it's brought in the name of the Chassam Sofer, that there's one Yom Tif that has no Masechta for it. even though it's much longer than Purim. It's 8 times as long as Purim. And there are more halachas than Purim. But nevertheless, there's no Masechta on this Yom Tov. In fact, there's not even one Mishnah in the whole Mishnayos that speaks about Chanukah, the halachas of Chanukah. It says randomly the Chanukah here, Bikurim, or Rosh Hashanah, or Tainus, but there's not even a Mishnah in Shas that says one din about Chanukah, and that is Masechta Chanukah. There's no Masechta Chanukah. Why? So they say over from the Chassam Sofer that who compiled the Mishnah? Rebbi. Rebbi comes from David. And Rebbi had an issue with what the Chashmonaim did. The Chashmonaim usurped Melucha to themselves. We love our Kohanim, but they need to stay Kohanim. They can't take sovereignty. And the Chashmonaim, according to the Ramban, they took a step into leadership, which didn't belong to them. And therefore, the Malchus Beis David had a problem with that. And therefore, to uphold the honor of Malchus Beis David, Rebbi Baruch HaKodesh removed it from the Mishnah. Okay. Well, comes Rav Pinchas Karatzer, and comes the Bnei Yissaschar, and comes the Chayzim Milublin, and comes the Zera Kodesh, and they say as follows. You know why there's no piyut for Purim and as a Semach David? Likewise, there's another interesting phenomenon. You know, in Hoshanas, we mention the name of every tzaddik. We mention Noach, we mention Gidon, we mention the candy man in a shul from 300 years ago. Every tzaddik in history is mentioned in the whole laundry list of tzaddikim, but not one. There's one tzaddik whose name does not appear in Hoshanas, Shaul. Shaul does not appear in Hoshanas, and says Reb Pinchas Karatzer and the Bnei Yissaschar and the Zera Kodesh, as well as the Chayzim Lublin, that Purim and Hoshana Rabbah are opposite days. Hoshana Rabbah is the day of David. It's David's Ushpizin. It's David's Midah of Malchus. Purim, on the other hand, is the day of Shaul. Why is Purim the day of Shaul? Because Shaul took a big misstep. He was supposed to wipe out Amalek, and he didn't. And Mordechai tells Esther, Im hacharesh tacharishi bo'es hazois. If you're going to keep quiet now, ad uvei savich tavedu. You and Shaul will go down the drain. Shaul will have no tikkun. So Purim is the day of Shaul. Purim is the day of Shaul. David says, leave me out. I don't want to be mentioned on Purim. I have no connection to Purim. Purim is Shaul's day. To quote the Zera Kodesh, you might not like this, David v'Shaul soinim zelazeh. David and Shaul, they didn't like each other. Actually, that's not what it means. David and Shaul, they hated each other. The Zera Kodesh writes. And therefore David says, Purim is a great day. Shaul will give you one day on the calendar, and everyone will respect and honor what you did, and how Esther saved your skin, but leave me out of it, says David. I have nothing to do with this day. I don't want to be mentioned. My Malchus and your Malchus, never the twain shall meet. So when you have a day in the sun, Shaul, David says, I'm out of here. So therefore, says Reb Pinchas Karatzer, says the Chayzim Lublin, says the Bnei Yissaschar, David is not connected to Purim in the sense. And the Bnei Yissaschar explains it as follows. There are 2 kinds of milchamas in Klal Yisrael. Yehuda always is at the forefront of war. Yadcha ba'iraf oivecha. Except when it comes to milchemes Amalek. David does not destroy Amalek typically. Yehuda does not destroy Amalek. Who destroys Amalek? We have a tradition. Amalek will only fall through the hands of the Bnei Rachel. And therefore, when it comes to destroying Amalek Day, it's Shaul's day, it's Esther's day, it's Mordechai's day. David says, as Semach David, leave me out of it. Do not say a word about Purim as a Semach David. Hoshana Rabbah is David's day. Shaul says, leave me out of it. You can mention Gidon, you can mention Noach, you can mention the candy man, but don't mention me, says Shaul. This is what's written in many, many Svarim. You know, quite a political view of these 2 days. Obviously, Baruch HaKodesh is a concept. Shaul has his realm, David has his realm, and Purim is the realm of Shaul, and Hoshana Rabbah is the realm of David. Therefore, David is not mentioned on Purim, and Shaul is not mentioned on Hoshana Rabbah. In fact, the Zera Kodesh of Rabshit says that the Medrash says on the pasuk, Zachreini Hashem b'rtzoi na'amecha pakdeini bishuasecha, that David is mispalel, that Ribono Shel Olam, when you make a miracle through Mordechai, at least mention me a little bit, David says. Says the Medrash, David, you got in there. Where did David get in the story of Purim? Ish Yehudi. Meaning at least David got some connection into the story. However, in general, there is no kroivitz for Purim in Ezat Samach David, because Purim is what we call Yoima de Shaul. There's no mention of Shaul in Hoshana Rabbah, because Hoshana Rabbah is the day of David.
Who wrote the kroivitz?
What Hoshana Rabbah? I don't know. I'm not sure if it was written by Rabbi Glatstein. I don't know. What makes it Hoshana Rabbah is the Ushpizin of David. It's the seventh Sphira is Malchus, which is David. Hoshana Rabbah is Mechemes Gog uMagog. There are a lot of connections between David HaMelech and Hoshana Rabbah. Comes the Sefer Oyel Moshe, and we go back to the last Gemara in Horiyos, where the Gemara tells us that there was a man by the name of Rav Shimon Gamliel. And Rav Shimon Gamliel was the Nasi. And Rav Meir was the Av Bezdin. And Rav Nosson was the Chacham. And it used to be that when Rav Shimon Gamliel walked in the room, everyone stood up. And when Rav Meir walked in the room, everyone stood up. And when Rav Nosson walked in the room, everyone stood up. And Rav Shimon Gamliel said, what? You're going to stand up for the assistant rabbi also? Not a chance. So Rav Shimon Gamliel conveniently waited for the day that Rav Meir and Rav Nosson weren't around. And he made a new takana. For me, you stand up, and for everyone else, you do the shuffle. So next day, Rav Meir and Rav Nosson walk in, and nobody stands up. They do the little shuffle, and they said, "What's going on?" And they found out Rav Shimon Gamliel made a law, so they want to get back at him. So they said they knew Rav Shimon Gamliel didn't know Uktzin. They said, "We're going to ask him to say a shiur in Uktzin tomorrow. He's not going to know what he's talking about, and we're going to depose him." So they had this great plan, but somebody, Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi, overheard it. So Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi started saying Uktzin on the top of his lungs that night. Shimon Gamliel overheard. He mastered Uktzin. The next day they say Uktzin. He said it like nobody's business. And then he said, Rav Meir, get out of here. Rav Nosson, get out of here. And he threw them out of the base medrash. Now, Rav Meir and Rav Nosson had a dream that they need to ask Rav Shimon Gamliel Mechila. What? They need to ask Rav Shimon Gamliel Mechila? He should ask them for Mechila. He's the one who made the law that they don't stand up for him. Why would they have to ask him? The answer is because Rav Shimon Gamliel came from David. And the Nesiim from David had a status of Malchus Beis David. And it is of utmost importance always to accord honor to the Nasi, even if he's not the Melech. To the point where Rav Meir had passed away. And generations later, Rebbi told his son Reb Shimon, we still don't say Reb Meir's name. They called him Acherim. And Rebbi said, come on. Shimon, Rebbi's son, said, come on, the fight's over. And Rebbi said, no, they're over, but our fight isn't over. So Shimon said, come on. Reb Meir wasn't successful in deposing you. So Rebbi said, okay, fine. So Rebbi said, from now on, we're not going to say Reb Meir Oimer, but we'll say Mishum Reb Meir. But if Reb Meir had been successful in deposing Reb Shimon Gamliel, we would never mention Reb Meir's name again. So what do we see from here? That the Malchus Beis David, especially Rebbi, was very, very cautious and aware of upholding the honor of the Malchus Beis David, to the point where generations later, they would not say over the name of one of the greatest all-time Tanoim. Can you imagine not to say Reb Meir's name? There might even be a whole sefer on Reb Meir soon. And they wouldn't even say Reb Meir's name. Why? Because he started up with Malchus Beis David. And Reb Meir was required to ask a mechila from Shimon Gamliel. In fact, the Shlach HaKadosh writes that the reason why the brothers sold Yosef is because they held Yosef wanted to be the Melech. And Yehudas should be the Melech. And they're starting up with Malchus Beis David. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, anyone who starts with Malchus Beis David is like starting up with the Shechina. That's how the Shechina was in on the Cherem. Remember? Even Hashem could not tell Yaakov Avinu what happened to Yosef because the brothers put Hashem in Cherem. How could that be? Says the Shla. Because they held Yosef was starting up with Malchus Beis David, taking the Melucha away from Yehuda. And anyone who takes Melucha away from David is like starting up with the Shechina. So they were able to be mitzaref the Shechina into the Cherem. So who do you think on Purim gets a little bit uncomfortable? While you're all jumping around and drinking and merrymaking, who do you think is getting a little bit uncomfortable on Purim? The descendants of David. They don't like it. They said, what's going on over here? This is Shaul's day. This is Mordechai's day. What are they going to do? Are they going to take this too far? Now let's take this even further. The Medrash says on the pasuk in Esther Rab, look at number 13. Mordechai yatzam l'fnei hamelech b'lvosh malchus. Mordechai went out before the king in the royal garments. Reb Pinchas oimer melech Mordechai al Yehudim. Mordechai became king. Just like a king wears royal robes, Mordechai wore a royal robe. Just like a king wears a crown, Mordechai wore a crown. Just like a king inspires fear over everyone, Mordechai inspired fear. Just like a king mints coins, Mordechai minted coins. Says the Medrash, what did it say? I happen to have it. I went to England this week, and maybe. Here, you see this coin? One side is Mordechai, one side is Esther. That's what the Medrash said. Just joking, it's not the actual coin. But it is an English pound, okay? It's actually still worth something as opposed to your dollar, okay? So, the Medrash says Mordechai minted coins. Mordechai was on one side, Esther's on another side. So comes Rabbi Glatstein. And Rabbi Glatstein says that this explains that at the end of the Megillah it says V'ratzoi l'roi v'chav, right? It says that who liked Mordechai? Most people, which is pretty much as good as you're going to get if you're a rabbi, right? But most people liked Mordechai. Says the Gemara. Who didn't like Mordechai? The Sanhedrin. Why didn't the Sanhedrin like Mordechai? Says Rabbi Glatstein, because there's a klal in Shas that if you're a melech, you can't be on the Sanhedrin. So they were purish from him. He used to be on the Sanhedrin. But once he became a melech, he can't go to the Shi. He's not a member of the Sanhedrin anymore. So ask Rabbi Glatstein the question of the night. Imagine if you went to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and you said, Reb Chaim, we're so delighted that you're upholding the Torah world, you're the Sar HaTorah, and you're putting out Svarim, and you learn Kol HaTorah Kol all year. So we want to honor you. We want to put a crown on your head. And we want to mint coins with Reb Chaim on one side, and the Chazon Ish maybe on the other side with the stipler. And we want to, since the Israeli elections aren't going anywhere, we want to make you the next prime minister. We can't go to a fourth election. You think Reb Chaim's interested in having Reb Chaim coins? What would he say to that? Bracha v'hatzlacha, right? Reb Chaim, I don't think he would take up any offer of making coins with his pictures on it. What in the world is Mordechai doing, walking around in a robe, minting coins with Mordechai's picture on it? Mordechai wanted illusory, empty, false kavod. Why did Mordechai need to be a king? Comes Rabbi Glatstein in the Yaros Tavash, and this is also explained by Reb David Tevel. Reb David Tevel was the Talmud Muvuk of Reb Chaim Volozhiner. He wrote a sefer, the Beis David. And the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says that upon entrance into Eretz Yisrael, Klal Yisrael is chayiv in 3 mitzvahs. Lahamed melech, lahachar zarei shel Amalek, v'livnois beis habechira. Make a king, destroy Amalek, build the temple. Ask the Beis David, Reb David Tevel, what are you talking about? These are the 3 mitzvahs you're chayiv when you enter Eretz Yisrael? You're chayiv in all the mitzvahs hatzliyos v'aretz when you enter Eretz Yisrael. You're chayiv in Shumas, Maasros, Shemitah. Why are we only mentioning make a king, destroy Amalek, and build the temple? Says the Beis David, what the Gemara is saying is, Zeh talei b'zeh. When you enter Eretz Yisrael, there are going to be 3 mitzvahs that one triggers the next. Mitzvah number 1 is you have to make a king. Because only a king could destroy Amalek. And only once Amalek is destroyed could you build a Beis HaMikdash. Why? So he says like this. The Beis David explains as follows. The Beis HaMikdash is God's throne. So long as Amalek is in the world, the throne isn't complete. So you can't build a temple if his throne isn't complete. You got to get rid of Amalek before you build a temple. Furthermore, remember when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was smuggled out of Yerushalayim? So he meets who? Vespasian. So what does Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai say to Vespasian? Shalom Aleichem Malka. How you doing, king? So Vespasian said, you're chayiv misa. I'm not a king. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, you are a king. Because I have a tradition, v'halavanoin ba'ader yipal, that the temple will only fall to someone who's a king. And if you're destroying the temple, you must be a king. Says the Beis David, if you need to be a king to destroy the temple, you must, by the corollary is, you must be a king to build the temple. And since in order to build a temple you have to destroy Amalek, you have to be a king to destroy Amalek. So here are the 3 steps. You appoint a king, you destroy Amalek, you build the temple. Says Rabbi Glatstein, says the Beis David, that means whenever we build a temple, we need to destroy Amalek. Who destroyed Amalek before we built the Bayis Rishon? So there's a man by the name of Shaul. Shaul tried to do it. He couldn't do it. So David came and he finished the job. Now we said in order to destroy Amalek, you need the Bnei Rachel. So the Navi actually says that at Siklag, David gathered the Bnei Rachel to help him destroy Amalek. Now David did a mighty good job destroying Amalek. He nearly completed the task. And that's why the first temple was a incredible era for Klal Yisrael. There was Urim v'Tumim there, Eish there. There was the Arayin there. There was Shechina there. There was Ruach HaKodesh. Those are the 5 things. But comes the Navi Chagai, and he says about the second temple, V'i Kavda, without a hay, that there were 5 things missing in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. What were they? The Arayin, the Eish, the Urim v'Tumim, the Shechina, and Ruach HaKodesh. There was no Shechina in the second temple. You know why? Because you can only build a temple if you destroy Amalek. And in the Bayis Sheni, they didn't really destroy Amalek. Because who tried to destroy Amalek in the times of second Beis HaMikdash? Mordechai and Esther. So you say, but I thought you have to be a king to destroy Amalek. That's exactly the point. That's exactly why Mordechai needed to be a melech. So Mordechai told Achashverosh, give me the royal robe. Put a crown on my head. And Mordechai went out to the mint and he started minting coins to solidify his position as Melech, to be able to destroy Amalek, to be able to build the Beis HaMikdash. But Mordechai, the Sanhedrin is going to separate from you. Says Mordechai, it's Kedai to be able to build the Bayis Sheni. You hear what's going on over here? Mordechai needed to be a king to build the Bayis Sheni. So Mordechai is a real... Now, the Bayis Sheni was missing Ruach HaKodesh. It was missing Shechina. You know why? Because Mordechai wasn't a real king. He was Mishneh LaMelech Achashverosh. Esther was a Malka, but the Jews didn't make her a Malka, Achashverosh did. So since their status of Melech was not complete, their ability to destroy Amalek was not complete. They only destroyed 75,000 Amalekim, and therefore the Bayis Sheni was incomplete. But now we need to know why. Now we know why Mordechai was a melech, in order to destroy Amalek. So I ask you, do you think everyone was comfortable with what happened on Purim? You think everybody watching Mordechai? Here you have this guy. Hey, Mordechai, where are you from? I'm an Ish Yemini, right? His father is from Binyamin. Maybe his mother is from Yehuda. His father is from Binyamin. Mordechai, you're a king? Does Malchus belong to you? You think the descendants of David were comfortable with what Mordechai did? Oh no, not a chance. They were getting very uneasy with what Mordechai was doing. It's similar, what Mordechai did before basically Zerubbabel takes over, is what Shaul did before David. You think that the Malchus based David and Shevet Yehuda were tzufridin with what Mordechai did? They probably had no choice. We have to eradicate Amalek. But they're getting a little nervous. I want to show you something amazing. What do we call the Malchus of Shevet Binyamin, Shaul? Does anybody know why his name was Shaul? What does Shaul mean? Anybody here named Shaul? Good. Shaul means borrowed. He's a borrowed king. He doesn't have solidified melucha. It's only temporary. On the other hand, what do we call the Malchus of David? David Melech Yisrael Chai? The Kayam, it endures. Shaul's Malchus is borrowed. David's Malchus endures. Does anybody know what we say in Kiddush Levana? We say, V'yikuyam banu akasav please, someone. V'yikuyam banu akasav bikshu as Hashem lekehem v'yes David Malkam. There'll be mevakesh. God and David. Shaul is a she'ela. David is a bakasha. Shaul is called Shaul, he's borrowed. David is ubikshu, that is the real request, the real seeking. So I found in a sefer, V'daber David Fink. Achashverosh, the last thing Achashverosh wants, he doesn't like Haman. Haman, in England, Haman is called a bad dude. Haman was, he's a guy with a long, twisty nose. He's a sinister guy. No one trusts him. You think Achashverosh likes him? Haman is the wicked guy. Why does Achashverosh appoint Haman? Because Achashverosh is not as big of a fool as you think. Achashverosh knew one thing and one thing only, that his melucha was in jeopardy. What is Achashverosh celebrating in the beginning of the Purim story? That the temple will never be rebuilt. Why is he celebrating that? Because he knows the only challenge to his throne is the Jewish people building the Beis HaMikdash. Says Achashverosh, what's the one thing standing in the way of the Jews building a temple? Which nation? Amalek. So Achashverosh takes Haman and he's Manasseh Haman. Haman, you're in charge. Because as long as you're around, there won't be a temple. Achashverosh didn't like Haman. He didn't trust him. But he knew that the one thorn in the side of building a temple is Amalek. So he promotes Haman. Haman was so powerful, maybe we'll talk about this on Purim night, that Zeresh tells Haman, go to Achashverosh, ve'emar lamelch, tell the king. Not ask the queen, not petition the king. Haman told the king what to do. Why did Achashverosh promote Haman so much? As long as there's a Haman, there won't be a temple. So as long as Haman's in the world, Achashverosh is safe. So Achashverosh tells Esther, look Esther, I don't know where you're from. I don't know if you're Jewish, North Korean, Chinese, Iranian, I don't know what you are. But there's nothing, maybe Hungarian. Vayomer Amalch Esther, ma she'ela seich, you want to borrow melucha? You want a temporary melucha? Which will never bring a temple? V'sinasin lach, you got it. You want to have what Shaul had? No problem. Because Shaul's kind of melucha will never build a temple and is not a threat to me. Oh, ma bakashasech. You want to reinstate Malchus Beis David? Not a chance. Ad chatzi Malchus. We're not building the temple. What a beautiful pshat. It's mamish emes. Ma she'elasech. You want Malchus Shaul? V'seinasin lach. Ma bakashasech. Not a chance. So Esther says, listen. Nafshi b'she'elasi. My she'ela is me. I'm going to be the Malka. I'll borrow Malchus. But V'ami, what all of Klal Yisrael wants, is really Malchus Beis David.
In the David Hashem Eri, David says, Acha sho'alti meis Hashem, Kaisa avakesh. Starts with the She'ela, and then he ends with the Bakash.
Good. That is true. Ayin b'Sefer Yimei HaPurim, he has a whole chapter connecting David HaMelech's request to these psukim in Esther. Comes the Bnei Yissaschar says like this. The Bnei Yissaschar says, I'm going to reveal to you what Rebbi's kavana was, that he wanted to be Oiker Purim, and we're going to use this Bnei Yissaschar to thread together the three practices of Rebbi. Remember, Rebbi did three things. Rebbi wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av, he bathed on Shavas B'Tammuz, and he planted a tree on Purim. The Bnei Yissaschar discusses one, and we'll use that as a paradigm to explain the others. Says the Bnei Yissaschar. The Shulchan Aruch tells us, it's based on a Yerushalmi, that when someone passes away in a family, the whole family should worry. The Gemara says, Echad mibnei mishpacha shameis tida kol ha-mishpacha. And what will assuage the worry from the family? Noilad ben zachar nisrapa kol ha-mishpacha. You ever hear that? It's halach in Shulchan Aruch. Someone's ba'avelus, the whole family should worry. As soon as a male descendant is born, everyone's safe. Now, who's born on Tisha B'Av? Who's born on Tisha B'Av? Mashiach. Who would be cognizant of Mashiach, of this descendant of David being born more than anybody else? Rebbi. Rebbi, every Tisha B'Av, he felt today is the birth of the Mashiach. Today is the day that it's Nisrapa, my Mishpacha. He already felt the gloom of Tisha B'Av lifting. Rebbi, who was always focused on the Malchus Beis David, felt on Tisha B'Av the dark cloud of Tisha B'Av lifting, because that's the day Mashiach is born. So Rebbi felt he could be Oker Tisha B'Av. Not Rabbi Kiva, not Rameir, not Rabbi Gamliel, not Rav Tarfon, Rebbi. So I want to say, what does it mean Rebbi bathed on Shavas B'Tammuz? So I want to say, B'derech Drush. Rebbi Rachatz. Now Rachatz can mean bathe. Rachatz could also mean, like we say in Baruch Shemay, Bei Ana Rachatz. In him I trust. Rebbi trusted. Bekroina, in the glory. Shal Tzipori, who's the bird? And Parsha Lech Lecha, v'yesat Tzipar loy basar, Klal Yisrael. B'Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. Rebbi saw. The Navi says that on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, it will one day be transformed into a Yom Tif when Mashiach comes. So Rebbi, being from the Malchus Beis David, he had confidence in the glory of the Jewish people on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. But V'Hashem Heir Einai, that I believe this explains Rebbi's practice on Purim. Because I purposely, intentionally left out the last 4 lines of the Gemara. The Gemara asks, what kind of tree did Rebbi plant on Purim? Says the Gemara, look at number 22, V'tani Allah, binyan shel simcha, netia shel simcha. Says the Gemara, Eza hi netia shel simcha, what kind of planting is the planting of simcha? Zeh hanoitea avarnuki shel malachim. He planted a tree of kings. And Rashi explains that when a king was born, they would plant a tree and they would use that tree for his chuppah. Rebbi planted a royal tree on Purim. What's he doing? What's he doing? I'll tell you what he's doing. Rebbi comes to a Purim and he says, Purim is the greatest day of the year. Fantastic day. The only thing is, this is Shaul's day. It's Yom HaShal. It's the day Shaul was rectified. It's the day Mordechai became the Melech. So Rebbi said, look, it's not like Hanukkah, I'm not going to put it into Mishnayos altogether. But I have to say that I get a little uneasy on Purim. After all, Shaul finally has his correction. Mordechai is walking around like a Melech. Wait a second, Mordechai. You want to be a Melech for a day, Gesundheit. But let's set the record straight, says Rebbi. Rebbi planted a tree. What kind of tree? Avarnuki shel malachim. Rebbi planted a tree of kings. Rebbi's putting his flag in the ground. And Rebbi's saying, Purim's a great day. Shaul, you're good. You're corrected. You're not going to go down the drain. Mordechai, you want to be a Melech for the day? Fine. But let's set the record straight. Malchus is maintained in the hands of the family of David HaMelech. So on this great day, when we're all honoring Mordechai the Melech, Mordechai is minting coins, Mordechai is wearing the royal robe, Rebbi says, don't get carried away over here, the Malchus belongs to us. All 3 practices of Rebbi are all the same. They're all because of the closeness and the importance that he maintained that the Malchus Beis David plays. And therefore it is no doubt, in my mind, we have another clue in this Gemara of where Rebbi planted the tree. Where did Rebbi plant the tree? 5 towns? Borough Park. Yerushalayim. Rebbi planted the tree in Tiberia. What's Tiberia? We've said many times. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says that the last stop of the Sanhedrin was Tiberia, and the first stop of the revelation of Mashiach will be Tiberia. Malchus Beis David will be Nisgale in Tiberia. So Rebbi says, Mordechai, this is your day. This is the day of Shaul. Ki Mordechai HaYehudi, Mishneh LaMelech HaChashverosh. Great. You want to mint coins? Gavaldik. You want to be the king for the day? Fine. You want to wear royal clothing? But let's remember where the Malchus belongs to and where it will return. The Malchus belongs to our family, and it will return right here in this city, in the city of Tiberia. So this is perhaps some understanding of the practice of the great Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. This is why there's no kroivitz in the Semach David. And this is why we don't say Hallel on Purim. You ready for this? This is Mamish Oyem and Oira. The Gemara in Pesachim says, who composed Hallel? Who composed Hallel? So the Gemara in Pesachim says, Rabbi Omer! David composed the entire Tehillim. Like it says, Kalu Tfilos David ben Yishai, and even though it was written by 10 sages, David wrote the whole thing. And the Gemara says, and when was Hallel said? Oidcha ki ani sani. David said about himself, I thank you, Hashem, that you afflicted me. The cornerstone that everybody disgraced became the leader. Yishai said about David. David's brother said about David. Shmuel said about David. When did they say this? On the day David became king. Hallel was the praise of David when he became king. About 10 days ago, I got an email from my dear friend Rabbi Yamin Justman. He asked me, which kapitel did David say when he became king? You know what I said? I'm honored that you would think I know the answer to that. But I'll look into it. And I never had a chance to look into it. But now I realize that this is what the Shiur is all about. The Gemara in Pesachim says that Hallel was said when David became king. The Gemara continues. Ana Hashem Hoshiana. David's brother said about him that Hashem saved him, made him king to build a temple. Ana Hashem Atzlichana. David said when he became king to build a temple. Baruch haba b'shem Hashem b'rach nechamez Hashem. Shmuel said on David. Shmuel said about David. David said. Everyone said El Karameka. In other words, what's Hallel? Hallel is David's song when he became the Melech. Says the Sefer Aryeh Shag, all the answers of the Gemara, that's the general answer. But that's not the real answer. You know why we don't say Hallel on Purim? Because why in the world would Mordechai and Esther, understanding what Purim is not David's day. The last thing that we're going to do on Purim is sing the song that they serenaded David with when he became the Melech to build the Beis HaMikdash. It's the most inappropriate thing you could possibly say.
Hanukkah with the Chashmonai.
What?
Hanukkah with the Chashmonai.
So Rebbi said, look, you can have challah, but no, a Masechta you can't have, you know? What, Chanukah with the Chashmonam?
Saying the Chashmonayim took the Malchus, David didn't like that either.
So you can say like this, that with the Chashmonam, that wasn't part of the Chanukah miracle. In other words, the miracle was the oil and the military victory. What they did later, and because of that there's no Masechta, but maybe that doesn't infringe on the Hallel. But to sing a Hallel for the Nes of Purim, which was necessary for Mordechai to become Melech, that would be highly inappropriate. Mar Rabbi Sai, wishing everyone a Freilichen Purim. Shkaya.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.